This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Have you downloaded the Maramoja app? Please do. Go to Play Store, go to App Store, download the Maramoja taxi app. You'll find it called Maramoja Transport Limited. There are several because they have several other services that they offer. Download the blue one. That's the one that will be the Maramoja taxi one. So when you have it, you have peace of mind. It's a ride-hailing app. It's Kenyan, and it has been made with Kenyan context. Kenyan context number one. I have my cab guy. That is Kenyan context number one. Everybody, before these things came, had a cab guy. You want to go somewhere, you have this number of this guy that you'd call. He had a cab. He was a cab driver. You'd call him, and he'd come in. Even the former provost of the All Saints Cathedral, who's our next guest, the Reverend Canon Dr. Sammy Wainaina, had a cab guy. True?
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah. You know. So this app is now saying you can actually just continue that tradition of having a cab guy because there's a facility on the app that allows you to tap, pair the driver, and go. So you have, if you hail for a taxi, you'll see several cabs around where you are. You can select, and then you pair and say, I want to be driven by John. John comes, John takes you wherever you're going. If you love John because of the service, because of how he is, because of how he's behaved, how he's taken you, the safety and all, you decide, all right, the next time I'm using a cab, I am going to look for John. So you can still pair with John, and John will come and pick you if he's nearby or if you choose to wait. Yes? So it allows you to have your cab guy. That is Maramoja Taxi. Maramoja ni yetu. Reverend Canon Dr. Sammy Wainaina. Hello.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very well.
It's good to have you back here.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to come again.
It's a way to close the year.
All right.
Yeah. Ulihama Kenya.
Sijui kama hiyo ni kuhama.
Yeah.
Look at where I am now. It tells you
This is the season when people like those come. we are witnessing all of the.
No. I'm not here on holiday. I'm actually en route back to London, and I normally come actually. Maybe very incognito, and
it's just 8 hours,
and then leave.
Okay.
But this time I seem to have sent a wrong message that I'm around. So
how can that possibly be wrong?
I find myself here.
But you're being here, Reverend Canon. How can that possibly be wrong?
Well, when you summon me,
we like having you here.
When you summon me, I don't know what wrong I've done. So.
Why must it be wrong? Perhaps it's right.
Well, it can be right. Maybe.
In this particular case, it's right.
Okay.
And it's good to see you. Good to see you smiling. Good to see you happy and healthy.
Yes, I'm in good health, and I'm okay. My family is okay. Yes, and we've settled well in London. Engaging with the global Anglican matters, and
you'll tell us what that.
But
job
also
is
local.
You'll tell us what that job is all about. City, welcome the Reverend Canon Doctor back in the country with the Kenyan proverb.
He who does not look ahead always remains behind. This week's proverbs have been from the country of Kenya. They will continue to be until Friday. He who does not look ahead always remains behind.
What's your interpretation of it?
You know, you need both views. You need the view. If like this morning when I was driving, I didn't concentrate too much on the rear. I concentrated in the front view. And I think that is the nature of life. You must keep focus to the front, not completely forgetting what is behind, because what is historical is also important, but it must always propel you to move forward. So we must overcome what is behind us,
so that we
move forward.
Going forward.
Exactly.
You're now serving as an advisor on Anglican Communion Affairs. That's your current role.
It is, yeah.
Based in London.
Yeah.
So who do you advise?
I advise the Archbishop of Canterbury, just to help you understand the way the Anglican Church operates. There are about 4 instruments that hold the Anglican together. The Anglican Church is large. It's worldwide. However, every province, every diocese is autonomous. It's like a big family. So you need a communion that brings all of them together. So one of the instruments is the Archbishop of Canterbury. He becomes like, he's not a pope, he's not. However, he has like, if you asked who is the
He's like the titular
spiritual leader of the denomination, then the Archbishop of Canterbury historically has been. So my work is to advise that particular office on matters of the Anglican Communion, not on matters England. I don't advise on matters England. England has its own system. Remember, it's a province by itself. Actually, there are 2, York and Canterbury. But historically, the Archbishop of Canterbury is also the primate of the whole of England, but also the Archbishop who is like the spiritual leader. But he doesn't dictate anything. It's a very collegial office, and my work is to advise that office.
On communion affairs.
On communion affairs. And that means, although my office is in London, I'll remain in London. I'll be in many parts of the world. Sometimes I will represent him. Sometimes I'll accompany him. And sometimes I'll be there engaging with different challenges that the church faces. One thing that I've learned for now getting to 7 months is that culture, context affects religion and the vice versa. And the church must constantly grapple with their context. And there is no neutrality. There is no uniformity. Every context is so unique and different. Sometimes in a week, I find myself in 2 or 3 contexts, maybe an Asian context, an American context, an African context, and I have to do a lot of reading, background check for me to understand, and also to check on the politics of the country, of the region, and how does it affect the church, and the vice versa. So it's a very complex, yet that's what I've been called to do for now. So I've become like a mediator, some kind of consultant for have challenges.
Indeed. Before you left, and leading, even maybe before any of us knew that you were leaving, you had already started, and you had been in the season, should I say, of speaking truth to power. And this power that we're speaking of is state power. And you often spoke about what needs to be done, from the responsibility that the church bears in the country to then the responsibility that state has been given to rule over. So, I mean, it is not foreign. It was not foreign to you.
No.
In terms of how you spoke. So while you were away, things happened. Things seemed to get a little bit, rocky here and there. A lot of political speak, the cost of living, things just got a little bit sticky. And then you came, and then church service on Sunday, we're in Advent. We're expecting, festival of 9 lessons and carols. We get into it and have a nice Merry Christmas. And then boom, you said...
The guy is here.
You said, no. Things are not going as they should. Corruption is rife. The government is not taking care of its people.
Sure.
And has hidden behind the guise of religion.
Yeah.
And it is not right. What happened?
Jesus was born in a particular context. Political, economic, social. And what I find people do here is to assume that the gospel today doesn't address the context we are in today. I sometimes wonder, all these pastors and all the theology we've done, and I hear many are doctors and all that, I wonder, did I go to a different school?
Or do they worship a different
Because
God?
when I read Isaiah, Isaiah is prophesying about the coming of the Savior and how badly the Savior is looking. He's bruised. He's even saying that people had to hide their faces because they didn't want to look at him. He was a weak shoot. And he's talking to a people who are oppressed economically and politically, and he's giving them hope of the tomorrow. But he's addressing also the challenges of their time. Then looking at the book of Titus chapter 2, Titus is saying, make Christianity look good by setting an example. While Isaiah makes Christ look weak or like a servant, Titus is saying, make Christianity look good. And that is an indictment on every Christian to make sure that they represent Christ wherever they are. In my years in the church, one of the things that we have suffered most in Kenya is dichotomizing that matters politics belong there, matters Christian belong here, and they only meet when somebody has a particular interest. And by the way, I need to clarify here and do. The church can use politics to benefit, but also the politics can use church to benefit. So I'm not here to blame either.
Yeah.
But as a theologian, I must ask myself, if Christ was born today, what kind of context would he find? If I was preaching that sermon in London, I would have given the London context. Now that I'm in Nairobi, I must speak about our own context. And so that was the basis. So Christmas is not just about celebration, about carol, and what the Western have created Christmas to look at. It is actually time when we say Christ is being born, he has no place to lay his head. He is in the stables. And so why should Christ be born in the manger? And Christ is Latiff, it's Muga, it's me. It's that poor person there who cannot understand. So what has Christmas to do with me? In this kind of housing, in this kind of taxes, that I can't access food, I'm not sure about the education of my children. That is bringing the gospel right to the village, to the house. And that's how theology works, in my understanding.
Maybe politicians have actually understood this very well, and they use it then to spread their message, right? They say there was suffering even then when Jesus was born, but people had to come together, people had to rally together to overcome their challenges. And similarly, we, as we approach Christmas, as Jesus is born, we have to acknowledge that we have challenges. We don't have sufficient housing where even Jesus can get lodging. This is our situation, but we must improve it.
But Eric, Jesus did not remain a baby. Jesus grew up.
Yeah.
Jesus preached a gospel of transformation. And for Jesus, the gospel was not just a tool to take people to heaven. I don't know why we keep talking about a heaven we haven't gone. Well, we can't make where we are a heaven we can enjoy. Jesus, if you look at him, he challenged the structures of that time. And I think that's my role as a pastor. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm only saying, hey, hello. And then we need to, now that we are talking about Advent, we are talking about the return of Christ. Not now as Isaiah is presenting him, but now as king and judge. And so let's not think that Christ remained in the manger. Christ grew, rose again, ascended into heaven, and he comes back as a king. That's the message of Advent.
Canon Wainaina, one of the things that you did say on Sunday, and it was clear, you said that those in government today, if I paraphrase, essentially hid behind the guise of Christianity, almost asking, where is that Christianity today when it comes to the issues that Kenyans are facing? Almost as though it was a ruse to be able to get them into office. and then after that they've abandoned it by the wayside. Is that what you meant?
I will clarify that in clear terms. This government was made to look as the most godly government. You'll see them in churches.
Made to look by whom?
By themselves. They would sit in churches. And you remember the last time I was here, I was actually challenging the president because he looked like an hour pastor. And I told him, hey, guy, we are here. We will do the work of prayer. Don't use prayer. Now there's no rain, now you call for prayers. And it's not actually prayers. It's actually some political meeting disguised as a prayer meeting. And I told the president, please, leave that. And if you want to attend, leave that for us to organize. Then one time I hear there are prayers in State House, and members of the cathedral are asking me, Provost, you didn't go for prayers. Which ones? And I see all manner of people in State House in the name of praying or cleansing the State House. You know what? You can make prayers private. What is this public display of prayer and Christianity? We actually make Christianity hated by people because they can't understand. The same guys who campaigned showing as if they had all the solution, then they turn around quickly, and it's like now they can't listen to the poor Kenyans. They overtax them. But when you look at the opulence around them, let me give you a quick example. A president is going for a service in a local church somewhere. Look at the motorcade. You wonder, why would you go with 50 cars to a church service? One, it's wasteful. Make the city and the country safe so that you can use two. I actually, in London, meet the king many times in the city. Do you know how many vehicles he has? 2. And 2 outriders only. Only. So how do you go with 100 vehicles to a church? Then your ministers come each with 20. Look at the wastage around the presidency. That is what I was addressing myself to. That this is a government, the political elite, that seems to enjoy so much the trappings of power at the expense of Wanjiku.
Maybe you need to contextualize. Now that you deal with contexts, right? Contextualize that probably that's how we Kenyans view power.
Exactly.
That's how we...
Actually, it's a societal problem.
It's us. It's expected that if the president went to the Africa Climate Summit in some small kadudu, or do people say, surely, that car thing is just for showing off, but we don't expect that you will be operating in that car vehicle. If the president operated in that car small car...
For some time.
Kadudu, going for meetings, we'd be like, what is this? Because we, as a society, view power in a certain way.
Yeah, but Latiff, let me also tell you something different. Leaders create cultures. Leaders can change things. And especially if you claim to be a Christian, then you do things differently. Do you know what attracts us to Christ? Because he did things in very different way. There were Pharisees and Sadducees of the time who wanted to be in flowing robes and looking glorious. What did he do? He changed it. That's why Christ is attractive. So when you have a president who is a Christian, what should they do? Tone down things. Change your budgets. When you hear that the office of the president in 3 months is using billions of shillings translated into about 23 per month, what does that tell you? He's too expensive. And so while I agree it's a Kenyan challenge, or actually more of African problem, it's actually politicians who have created that to make us believe. What about if those people in power today change to that? You know, at the beginning of Ruto's presidency, I expected him as a Christian president because I'm only using the information I have, that he is a Christian, his wife is a prayerful person. I expected him, first of all, to declare his wealth. Come out. Tell us what you own. After that, create a culture. People around you must do the same. Number 2, declare that corruption will be my biggest target.
He has declared.
No, he hasn't. And not just to declare. It is actually to demonstrate that seriously. Look at the blackouts in this country. Kwani, what happened after this government took over? We didn't used to have all these blackouts, leaking airports and all that. Don't we have people who are employed to constantly continue to improve? So when you see wanton wastage in government, you create actually a culture. And that's why many people want to be politicians. So it is attractive. But I don't think it's attractive to be a politician in London or in the UK. Actually, you are more of a servant. And people can call you back if you're not serving them. And you've heard of ministers who have goofed in public. And they have been sacked quickly. But here, nobody is actually sacked. Look at the mess at the immigration office. That people can apply for their simple passport. And it takes months and months, and the frustrations and the bribery that goes on around there. And we see it even as we walk around there. I want to see if we are seriously Christian, because here we are talking about religion. Hello, please let's be. We would rather say we are not. I would rather deal with somebody who is not than dealing with somebody who says they are, yet they are not.
Our guest is the Reverend Canon Dr. Sammy Wainaina, advisor on Anglican Communion Affairs, based in the UK city.
You know, the calling that any minister of the gospel of Christ has is a very difficult calling. Because if you were to look, this isn't really complicated. You look at what the person whose gospel you're following did and lived by, again, it wasn't very difficult. It wasn't difficult to understand. It isn't complicated. The complication comes in the application. Because you look at the person of Jesus, and the thing that he confronted directly when he began his ministry were the religious leaders, the people who are supposed to be the spiritual heads. That is where the largest opposition came from. But you see, these people were used to a culture and a tradition, and if you look at the way they went about their things, represented therein was the religious aspect, the economic, the social, cultural. Yes, they all represented. And many of the challenges had to do with all these facets, saying, you know, there's a time when the disciples were accused of eating on the Sabbath, and the question then was, what was at stake here? Was it culture? Was it religion? Was it commercial? He said, is the Sabbath meant for man or man for the Sabbath? I mean, come on, folks. Then came a cultural issue and a moral issue. A lady who was caught in morality. Indeed, that wasn't even being denied. The question that was then brought into being by Christ was, he who has the first stone. Not complicated.
Or where is the guy?
Yeah. This person, she wasn't alone. You can't commit adultery by yourself.
Even if you tried.
You need accompaniment. So, again, if you bring this context, and Reverend, thank you very much for bringing the subject of context. You bring in the context of the country. Then the question that is brought to the fore is, what then is the role of the church? What's the role of, you expanded, of religious leaders in this? The truth that must be followed was the truth that the gospel represented. So how much of it do we see being represented, and how much of it do we see being challenged? In fact, there are those like me who argue that if you see things going completely wrong in the country, the problem is within the establishment of the church, because the moral authority that they hold has waxed and waned, and they no longer seem to have it, so they can't wield it. So things that would ordinarily not go wrong will suddenly go very, very wrong. The question is, how do you set this right? Because the things that appear to be wrong are so many. I have a question for you, because this thing has bothered me, and I'm glad you're here. If I take the view, as a Christian, which I am, that all leadership is sanctioned by God at some level, for whatever reasons, some of which I have no clue about and I don't even understand. So, then do you then address the issues that a leader has directly, and how do you address it effectively without compromising with the truth, yet respectfully?
First of all, Muga, I would like to interrogate the view that every leadership comes from God. That is not purely true. And I know it has been preached to us, so to silence us, that you can't come to power unless God approved of it. The same scripture, if you read it and interpret it well, we also have leaders who are elected through the desires of the people. Those leaders that God appointed, He appointed a king, but at the same time appointed a prophet. God will never give power to one side without check and balance. So don't preach the gospel only one side that favors one. Preach it also the other way. When the kings failed, Saul, for example, is told to annihilate, wipe out, destroy. Then Saul sees these sheep are fat, they are looking nice. Sure, how can I destroy good things?
And they were created by God.
Yeah, and then
God
he
has
hides
put me
them.
in their path, put them in my path.
Yes. Then the prophet comes and says, "What is that I hear making noise somewhere? Oh, we found these things and we thought they're actually good for God." You can see how we play with matters of religion and politics. And that's why the Bible would say to be obedient is then better than a sacrifice. So God is not pleased by sacrifices. And sometimes you see people trying to give to the church in the name of we are giving to God. Sorry, you're not giving to God. You are doing it just for yourself. Now, there are many ways you can deal with the king, Muga. One, you can meet him privately. If he listens and changes, then that matter is done. And I have done that in the past. I have given one-on-one in a very respectable way when Uhuru Kenyatta was president. But I would also tell him, when I'm with you, you look fine. You look like you're listening. But there's nothing that follows after that. And I tell him, Mr. President, then I have no choice but to tell you. On the pulpit. Because the power you have, yes, belongs to God, but was given through me, my vote. And me, I'm a priest. I'm also held accountable. Whatever I do is, I'm challenged. Therefore, I'll challenge you in that pulpit. And so, it's not that we are disrespectful to the leadership, but it is to tell them what you're doing is wrong. But let me agree with you on something. The biggest group that Jesus Christ faced were actually the religious leaders.
Yep.
Religion can be created in a way it becomes economic, that people benefit. You remember one girl who was exorcised of a demon by Paul, and the whole village was like, this was a source of income. How could you exorcise the demon? So so they would rather have a girl live with demon but continue to bring money. Is that the kind of gospel we want in Kenya? Actually, the biggest problem in Kenya are not politicians. They are the religious leaders. They benefit from this corrupt system. One, at an individual level. And secondly, at now a corporate level. I went to a meeting, and I will not give you the details. But as I was leaving, I was asked to pass by to pick mafuta ya gari. I told the gentleman, I work for the cathedral. They provide me with a car and a driver. He is actually here waiting for me. No, lazima upitie pale. Usain, nikamwambia no. If I do that, actually, I'll never then question that same government. It was actually the former government. And I looked very stubborn. And I know people find me stubborn. But it's because Why should I receive money? But you know what? These brown envelopes, people receive them at individual levels. One of my clergy at All Saints went for a funeral somewhere in Kirinyaga. And on her way back, she receives some M-Pesa. Then anauliza, where did that come from? No, that politician who came had given wachungaji ambao walikuwa kwa mazishi 100,000 to share. And you know why that money is given? So that he has a place in the funeral to address the mourners. Look, the clergy becomes brokers. I went somewhere in Embu one time, and I heard that afternoon, clergy in the area, Anglican clergy, had mobilized people and taking them kwa mheshimiwa fulani. And then they were given millions that they needed to share. Unfortunately now in the sharing, akachukua nyingi kuliko wengine. So clergy are there in collars and they are fighting about handouts. So I want to agree with you. If Jesus came here, he will not chastise first the politician. He will actually chastise.
So it's not a new thing.
Leader. No, it isn't.
It's what you have seen religious leaders do from time immemorial.
However, that doesn't make it right. And that's why the prophets were there, to continuously tell the religious leaders as well as the political leadership. It's a power play. It's about influence and how people benefit economically.
Who starts this? Who starts this power play? Is it the politician who's trying to influence the clergy, or is it the clergy who's trying to influence the politician?
Actually, it's paradoxical.
It is paradoxical.
It is paradoxical. It can start from any. Remember, both have power and influence. So I can initiate it. And I have the language. I even know. And this pulpit belongs to me.
And you have the people.
Yes. Then you chota. But the politician also can introduce it and say, hey, mchungaji, for a long time, gari yako haijakuwa na tires. Nothing is given for free.
Hauna shamba ya kanisa.
I wish people would know that. So unfortunately, we are in a paradox.
Where shall Jesus come from to come and do what Mheshimiwa Sankok says? Depata watu wakiuza mboga na sukuma kwa kanisa. Piga makofi. Where shall we get this? So that, that this disruptive leader, whether political or religious, who says, this is the nonsense that we have, but it must stop.
Sometimes.
And lead by doing.
Latiff, I feel bad. Why should I just come? Well, I read something somebody said. Well, I've had many things people say about my sermon on Sunday. I'm a Rudy, and he has picked from where he left. That says what? That the church doesn't engage.
So that nobody picked up.
So I ask myself, do I have a problem? In fact, some politicians will say, Wainaina kuna shida nyingi sana. Mimi sina shida yote. Me, I want to be faithful to Christ. I don't know whether you know, when I was leaving All Saints Cathedral, during my farewell, I asked the members, have I ever stolen anything from you?
Yeah.
If I have, come. I want to be faithful at an individual level. I want to be accountable. I wish I would see many, many of our clergy do such things. So actually, Christ is present. It's only that we don't want to give him room. That's why he's born in the manger. Now, to argue further, when you see now senior bishops and clergy getting appointment in political spaces, while it is good and people go there in the name of God, if you don't perform well, what is the view by the people about religion? How do they view Christianity? They are like, watu wanajua kutuchezea sana.
Same.
It's the same people. So actually I can imagine it's very frustrating now for people to believe, especially in pastors. When you now look, and sorry, I criticize even Christianity. I don't think I just attack politicians. When you see now some of our evangelical churches that take advantage of our people, impoverish them, and do funny things in the name of Christ. You ask, if I was the president, would I allow such a thing? No. Closing churches is part of the regulation by the government. But you know what? Back to the paradox. They're the beneficiaries of the same confusion. Look at what happened in Mombasa with Shakahola and all the others. So where is that matter now? Silent.
It's still somewhere going on.
No.
Digging up.
Sorry. Tell me in 10 years whether anything will have happened.
Nothing will come out of it.
Nothing.
There's also the team that was formed to look at how best to then regulate the church or religion. And how to deal with such, issues of when religious leaders seem to be straying and getting off. And it has brought up some heated debate from clergy themselves on no. There's some areas where you cannot go. If you go there, then now you'll be, crossing the line and challenging God. How do we address these issues?
You know what? And that's why on Sunday, I didn't just challenge the government, the executive, I also challenged the parliament. Because they are the ones who create the laws. They debate them. Let them make laws for this country. Laws that are fair, but they are also punitive and strict. Otherwise, the difference between the developed world and the developing is lack of laws and also the implementations, especially the enforcement of those laws. And that's why I think many people had a lot of hope in President Ruto. Why? He came strong as a Christian. He showed that he knows the hustler life. He demonstrated that the problem was actually with Uhuru government, which he was part of, unfortunately. Again, another paradox. He looked like people would believe him. Today, we have a government that suffers trust deficit. And that's why the constant engagement is important. If the church cannot regulate itself, in my view, and I've said this here before, let it be there. Let the government take control of the lives of Kenyans. Otherwise, why would you be charging thieves outside there? And you can't charge pastors who are also thieves. The same law should be applied.
You said
there must be a discipline.
Some of these things then, raise doubts on the credibility of Christianity as a faith. When you look at the people who come out and stand up and say, I am a Christian, whether on the political side or at the pulpit, and then you look at their mannerisms and habits and what they're doing and what they're saying, and you ask yourself, really,
what is being Christian?
What is this being Christian all about?
And why you say you have this tag of being a Christian, but the practice is completely different. You're right.
Let's just call it. Some religious leaders in this country are wash people. And you can see it. People talk about,
how is it possible that this and this
one, from how they behave, how they operate, the kind of stuff
how
that they post, how they live,
yes.
The kind of lifestyle that they're leading, and you're wondering,
something is not adding up here at all.
Where is all this coming from?
I remember the story that our Mheshimiwa Songok talked about, what happened in the temple, buying and selling. What do you think was the real issue there? Because it isn't as though on the day Jesus was there is when they were buying and selling. That had been going on for some time.
Yeah.
And what did he say about it? You've turned my father's house. What had they turned it into?
A den of thieves.
So, you think wash, we invented it?
It was there then.
They've always
Some of them were actually selling the animals that have been brought as sacrifice. They're auctioning them.
There wasn't anything they were not doing which could not be considered adverse. You see, it brings us back to what it is that faith or religion, or let's talk about Christianity, does. You see, the understanding is that on our own as human beings, we are limited. And because we are limited, there is a need for divine intervention. You see, the Christian faith is very logical. But then again, it's a paradox. But then the faith also goes beyond logic.
Yeah.
And that's why it's faith. So people who subscribe are people who have a belief and a hope in something you actually can't touch ordinarily, but something you can live and experience and has a reality.
However,
Yes.
however, we need to build a structure
Yes.
around faith and religion. You leave it loose, then it becomes too fluid.
You get shakahola.
It becomes too fluid. Let me give you the context of England, where now I live. Do you know, I haven't been licensed yet to serve in the church 7 months later.
Why?
By law, I should do 3 safeguarding trainings. I have done 2 online, but because I'm a senior clergy, I must do the 3rd one. You know, the church in generally in the West has suffered because of case litigations, because of the children molestations, adults who are vulnerable being taken advantage of.
Yep.
And the church almost went bankrupt. Even my boss had to stand one time in court and broke down when he was told about the evil that is in the church. So today in England, you don't just rush with a collar somewhere and you start preaching or handling people. You can't by law. So Muga,
licenses you?
Muga, I hear you when you talk about faith that is not tangible. That's your thing. That's what you believe.
No, that's what I know.
Yes. However, as the government, what do I know? Or the church? The church in England has also established its own legal mechanisms to weed out clergy that are not fit to be in public. And let me tell you, if you're blacklisted in the UK, you can't serve anywhere. Do you know I haven't preached in the UK at all? It's until April when I will do the licensing, the 3rd safeguarding at senior level.
Yeah.
In April, then now the Diocese of London will license me. Look, there is freedom to enjoy faith, that which you call something I can't really explain. All right. However, because your personal faith affects mine, I need to protect myself from your faith.
Yeah.
Because it may not be the right faith. So faith then becomes quite individual. And people keep talking, faith amongst the Wazungus is too private. Yes, why? Mine can affect you. So I can't play music in a block of flats in the name of I'm a Christian. The law, the police will be there. And there is law that actually will deal with me. So the scaffoldings around faith is very, very important. Otherwise, faith, and you see, and we can talk openly about Islam and what fundamental Islam has done. Fundamental Christianity will do the same. It's evil. And it must be within a law that controls it. And that's why I feel the government has still a very big role to structure religion.
Is it the government or is it the church itself?
Both.
Who guides the other?
No, first of all, there are national laws. Like in England, there are national laws. They say this is the guideline in which the church must operate. Then the church now develops policies that implement the law or the act. So both do that, but at the national level, it must be done. Then the church, when matters go to court, the church will be asked, when somebody came and told you they were sexually molested, you see, like in the UK, if somebody came and told me they were sexually molested in church, do you know the first thing I'll tell them? On this one, I'll not guarantee you confidentiality. Kindly give me your contact because you need help. And I'm going to contact a safeguarding officer who will now take over from there. In Kenya, we talk of counseling. But somebody has been molested.
Yeah.
And that's how people get into a lot of problems in African countries, or what you'd call the third world. In the name of counseling, even people get into deeper problems. So you can see there are structures within the church, but also the laws that also protect religion. This government, sorry, unfortunately, it makes it look, we're in a free country, we should enjoy, no regulation. So this is actually becoming chaotic. Unfortunately, they become beneficiaries of that chaos.
There's still the overarching feeling in many quarters that the church ought to do church business and the state ought to do state business. However, we still see often, and with good reason, that these lines cross. Oftentimes it's difficult to ask, or rather to see, what that relationship actually should be. What should it be? What should the relationship between church and state be? We've asked it over and over again, and we still don't seem to be able to.
Well, for me, I did it practically. I dealt with the state like fire. I wasn't far from it. I wasn't close to it. I must, as a priest, I must be safe enough to tell you, I don't think what you're doing is wrong.
That's right.
And do if you look at my engagement with the government for the years I've done, I'm always on the side of the downtrodden, the poor. I'm always asking, why would you live that kind of life up there? Like I was looking at the police on Sunday in the cathedral, seated there. They look poor. They look needy. They are not even sure about their medical insurances. They are not sure about... There are many things. You can read it.
Yep.
Then on the opposite, you have now the bosses, the politicians. They look opulent. Why should we have such disparities? And so, while it is true, there will be crossing. That will always happen. In the UK, it happens. There's a lot of interaction. However, the government is able to challenge the church and the church is able... So safe spacing is important. You cannot be one. We are not one with government. And unfortunately here, the church seems to be in bed with the government.
30 seconds, Canon, as you exit. If you were, would you like to meet President William Ruto one-on-one like you did with
I would love to.
What would you tell him?
Seriously.
What would you tell him?
I would ask you, are you a brother in Christ?
He'd tell you, yes, I am.
Show me what you have done as a Christian. Demonstrate to me. Why are you overtaxing Kenyans? Why is corruption not your biggest challenge? Don't you see the wastage? How much would the wasted money be in terms of education and in terms of healthcare? Those two things that affect the poor mwananchi.
Reverend Canon Dr. Sammy Wainaina, advisor on Anglican Communion Affairs. Keep it here for more.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.